I was sickened. I was sickened by the standing ovation. I felt like Hollywood is just spineless.
Jim Carrey almost drowned on a movie set in 1998. The crew thought he was acting. They kept the storm machines running while he went under wearing waterlogged wool that pulled him down like concrete. He raised his fist, the agreed safety signal, but nobody moved.
You know, Jim Carrey is a great character, and I was lucky to get the part.
What really happened in those final seconds before he reached the edge? And why did the director make him sit in a bathtub for 4 hours until his co-star fainted? The stories from his biggest movies reveal a man who pushed himself past limits most actors would never touch. Jim Carrey was 12 in 1974 when life dropped out from under him. One week, there was a small sense of comfort in Scarborough, Ontario, and the next, his father, Percy, lost the accounting job that paid the bills. It happened so fast that the family of 6 went from a normal house to a beat-up Volkswagen van, driving through Toronto suburbs looking for a place to land. They parked near Lake Ontario for months in 1975, trying to stay invisible as cops pushed them from spot to spot. Jim and his brother John even moved into a leaky tent by the water when the van got too cramped, rain soaking their sleeping bags while winter crept in. They washed up in public bathrooms, skipped meals, and learned how to survive off whatever scraps they could find. Percy chased odd jobs, while Jim mopped floors at Titan Wheels tire factory for a place to sleep. His grades collapsed from exhaustion, and the straight-A kid started failing classes. Years later, he said the poverty felt so heavy, it almost snapped something inside him, and comedy became the only way to stop himself from breaking. School never recovered after that. The firing happened the week of Jim's 12th birthday, January 17th. Within months, the family was evicted, and Jim tried to balance Aldershot High School with night shifts. He was 16 when the pressure finally crushed his education. He worked 72-hour weeks, cleaning the factory from 6 at night to 2 in the morning, then hitchhiking nearly 50 kilometers just to make it back to school half asleep. By the spring term, his English and math grades had dropped to failing, and the teachers barely recognized the quiet kid slumped at his desk. On his 16th birthday, January 17, 1978, he quit school completely. He was earning $3.75 an hour and handing money home because someone had to. He wired whatever he could, even $20 or $40 at a time, while his siblings tried to help. He was so worn down that he lost 25 pounds and once snapped in class hard enough to throw a desk at a bully. That anger became fuel. In 1979, he walked into comedy clubs in Toronto like someone who had nothing left to lose. Long before that collapse, there were signs of who he wanted to be. At 10, he sat at a school desk and wrote a 50-page joke book by hand, cartoons and riddles filling lined paper. He sold copies to classmates for 25 cents and made lunch money from laughter. A teacher praised it during assembly, and the room cheered, but bullies ripped pages from it later and laughed in his face. Still, he tried again. At 12, he entered talent shows and impersonated Elvis Presley in a school auditorium, swiveling his hips and sneering through Hound Dog while 400 students watched. He won first place and $5. Then he tried impressions of his mother Kathleen during her darker moments, using comedy to lift the weight in the house. For a brief moment, audiences clapped. Then the job loss came and the stage disappeared. He even mailed his joke book to the Carol Burnett Show at age 10, begging to be hired, chasing a dream before life even let him grow into it. The darkness at home grew heavier. Percy tried to end his life more than once. In the summer of 1976, he walked into traffic on Highway 401, and Jim dragged him back to the shoulder of the road while cars rushed past. In October 1977, Percy swallowed 40 Valium pills, and Jim found him at 4 in the morning after a factory shift, foam at his mouth, ambulance sirens closing in. He survived, but the damage stayed. Jim was only 14, and already taking care of the house while his mother drifted in and out of pain pill haze. In 1978, Percy tried again near Eglinton Avenue, and police pulled him away from the edge. Jim learned early that adults could fall apart too, and he built a mask to hold everything together. By the 1980s, he admitted the fear never left him, and the manic smiling comedy was a shield against everything he could not control. He quit the factory on January 17, 1979, the day he turned 17. He slammed the janitor badge down, packed a duffel with a little over $100, and hitchhiked to Yuk Yuk's Comedy Club. He bombed in front of 12 drunk strangers, but he kept going. He slept on bathroom floors and busked on street medians for coins. He earned just enough to send $50 a week home. A few months later, he opened for Rodney Dangerfield and found himself standing under a real spotlight, even if it was still shaky. By 1980, he was performing across Toronto. By 1981, he moved to Los Angeles. There were nights he doubted everything, so he wrote himself a check for $10 million and dated it Thanksgiving 1995. He kept it folded in his wallet like a promise. His first attempt at a television career came in 1984 with a sitcom called The Duck Factory. It only lasted 13 episodes and was crushed in ratings. He had moved his parents to Los Angeles in hope, then had to send them back in embarrassment. He went back to stand-up, experimenting with routines that sometimes bombed for weeks at a time. He met Melissa Waumer at the Comedy Store in 1986, married her in 1987, and held his daughter in his arms soon after. The stakes got higher. He was no longer just chasing a dream for himself. The small film roles started appearing, a line in Finders Keepers, a scene in Peggy Sue Got Married, a moment in The Dead Pool. Then Earth Girls Are Easy in 1988, and Damon Wayans saw something in him. He told his brother Keenan Ivory Wayans about this lanky Canadian with a face like rubber and a voice that could bend into anything. Jim auditioned and joined in Living Color in 1990. He almost missed the chance. Negotiations nearly fell apart, and someone else was close to being cast, but somehow the door opened. The show premiered in April 1990 and changed everything. Fire Marshal Bill, Vera DeMilo, the manic characters that looked like they crawled straight out of his childhood survival instincts. His auditions for Saturday Night Live had failed 3 times. But here he was, stealing scenes and building momentum. Then came the movie that turned him into someone nobody could ignore. Jim Carrey earned only $350,000 for Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, filmed from May 10th to July 19th in 1993 in Miami. It felt like a small paycheck for a movie that so many people on set were unsure about. Critics hated it before anyone even saw it. 3 days before the release, on February 4th, 1994, Siskel and Ebert called it the worst movie ever made and said Jim Carrey was the worst actor ever made. His manager broke the news in a Chicago restaurant while Carrey was performing live. And that moment could have crushed him. But when the movie reached audiences, everything shifted. It made $107.2 million worldwide from a $15 million budget. And suddenly, people cared about his rubber-faced comedy, his strange energy, his improvised line "Alrighty then." By the end of that same year, he jumped from $35,000 to $7 million for Dumb and Dumber. It happened fast. It happened loudly. And it happened because audiences believed in him more than critics ever did. That passion for what he loved also led to one of the strangest creative choices in Ace Ventura. Jim Carrey wanted the death metal band Cannibal Corpse in the movie. He saw them on the Arsenio Hall show and became obsessed with adding them. The band did not think it made sense. They were worried about becoming a joke. They were just young musicians from Buffalo who never imagined a mainstream comedy would chase them. Carrey wanted them so much that he changed the shooting schedule to fit their tour dates. They agreed, performed a shorter version of Hammer Smashed Face, and the cameo became a cult moment. Drummer Paul Mazurkiewicz said they were flattered and stunned that Jim wanted them that badly. Success changed Carrey's world almost overnight. When it came time for Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls in 1995, he earned $15 million. That was a 4,185% jump from the original $35,000. The sequel had a $30 million budget and earned 7 times what it cost. But fame came with a price. Carrey struggled on set. He fired the original director, Tom DeSerchio, and replaced him with Steve Odekirk. People working behind the scenes said he behaved in ways that were unpredictable. The experience soured him. So when The Mask 2 offered him $10 million, he walked away because he felt it would not challenge him. After that moment, he avoided sequels for almost 20 years until Dumb and Dumber 2 arrived in 2014. This is why Ace Ventura 3 never happened. Carrey later described returning to old roles as soul-destroying. In 2022, while promoting Sonic the Hedgehog 2, he explained that sequels often feel like imitating yourself instead of creating from real inspiration. He had no desire to revisit characters. Without Carrey, studios knew an Ace Ventura sequel would fall apart. The franchise died because the one person who made it special refused to go backward. The most infamous drama came from Jim's relationship with Tommy Lee Jones, who played Two-Face. Their clash did not begin with a shouting match in front of cameras. It happened quietly in a restaurant. One night, while they were in the middle of production, Jim walked into a place, and the maitre d' told him that Tommy Lee Jones was eating in a corner booth. Jim decided to say hello. As he told the story years later, he walked over with a friendly greeting and watched the blood drain from Jones's face. Jones stood up, shaking, as if he had been caught in the middle of a fantasy where he was killing him. Jim said that was how it felt. Jones hugged him, leaned in, and quietly said, "I hate you. I really do not like you." When Jim sat down and tried to ask what the problem was, Jones delivered the now legendary line, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery." Jim left that encounter stunned. Director Joel Schumacher later backed up Jim's story. He said Jones was not kind to Carrey during the shoot. Norm Macdonald also spoke openly about the feud. Many people around the production pointed to jealousy as the root. In 1995, Jim Carrey had just come off that historic string of hits that destroyed the box office. Tommy Lee Jones was a respected dramatic actor, famous for stealing scenes, someone used to being the biggest presence in the room. Schumacher said, with respect, that Tommy was a scene stealer, but you cannot steal a scene from Jim Carrey. It is impossible. That reality seemed to bother Jones. Jim himself said he believed the problem was that he was the star, and Jones did not like that balance. There may have been seeds planted even earlier. While Schumacher and Jones were working on The Client, producer Peter McGregor Scott visited the set with the Batman Forever script. He hoped Jones would take the Two-Face role. At first, Jones read it and said he did not get it. After more talks, he agreed, flew into Burbank, and joined the project. At that time, Jim Carrey was already being positioned as the main villain in all the early promotion. Jones may have expected a more central place in the story, only to realize that the studio and the marketing machine were going to revolve around the Riddler instead of Two-Face. That mix of expectations, pride, and box office numbers turned into a strange, one-sided feud that has never really healed. The two men have never worked together again since Batman Forever wrapped in 1995, and Jones has never publicly addressed the comments. Jim still calls him a phenomenal actor and says he loves him, even while telling the story of that painful night. Jim's process on Batman Forever also showed how far he would go for a role. The Riddler's cane, with its question mark-shaped handle, became a kind of toy and weapon in his hands. He broke and bent so many of them that the production went through at least 100 canes. He snapped them over his shoulder, slammed them into the set, even took chunks out of the ceiling. Val Kilmer admitted that it was hard not to laugh when Jim was working because he would try anything. Joel Schumacher described him as someone who thinks and practices harder than anyone he had worked with. then shows up and appears totally spontaneous because all that work is hidden inside the chaos. The skin-tight Riddler suit made things even more intense. Jim had to keep his body lean and his weight stable because the spandex showed every small change. It was another layer of pressure during a period when he was already juggling fame, expectations, and hostile co-stars. After Batman Forever and The Cable Guy, he reached that legendary pay tier. The $20 million check became his standard price for a while. He made that amount for Liar Liar in 1997, then for Me, Myself, and Irene, then later for How the Grinch Stole Christmas and Yes Man. The Cable Guy itself was a strange case. His salary alone took up nearly half the movie's entire budget, and the film disappointed many critics and many fans who expected a lighter tone. That made Liar Liar very important. If it had failed, the 20 million streak might have ended right there. Instead, it became a hit, earned him another Golden Globe nomination, and proved that his face on a poster could still guarantee ticket sales even with a huge price tag. Even with all that money, he was willing to bend his rules for a story he believed in. When The Truman Show came along, he did something surprising. He took a pay cut. Instead of demanding the usual $20 million, he accepted around $12 million because he wanted that script, and director Peter Weir wanted him. Weir believed Jim was the only actor who could balance satire, sadness, and innocence in that role. He even held production back so Jim could finish his other commitments to The Cable Guy and Liar Liar. When they finally met at Jim's house, they immediately started playing with ideas. Out of those early talks came the bathroom mirror moment, where Truman looks into his reflection and talks about this planet Trumania of the Burbank galaxy. That line and that whole beat came from Jim's improvisation. The climax nearly killed him. In the final sea sequence, Jim sat alone in a small boat, while massive jet engines and wave machines hammered the tank around him. He wore heavy wool clothes, a wool sweater, wool pants, shoes, and everything became waterlogged. When the storm grew worse, he went under the surface. With all that weight on him, he started to drown. He signaled distress by raising a clenched fist, which was the agreed safety sign, but the crew thought he was still acting. The storm machines kept running. The boat pitched, and nobody moved. With what he later described as his last bit of energy, he swam blind and desperate until he reached the edge of the tank and pulled himself up, gasping for air while the storm still roared on for about another minute. The scene ended up looking incredibly real, because it almost was. If The Truman Show showed his dramatic depth, Man on the Moon showed how far he could push himself mentally. He did not simply portray Andy Kaufman. He decided to disappear and live as Andy. During the entire shoot, he refused to respond to the name Jim. People had to call him Andy, or, when he played the alter ego, Tony Clifton. The Netflix documentary Jim and Andy later revealed what that choice did to everyone around him. He sat with Andy Kaufman's real daughter, Maria Colonna, in character, and spoke with her for about an hour as if he really were her father. They even told each other, "I love you," like parent and child. He picked fights, provoked people, and especially targeted professional wrestler Jerry Lawler, who had been part of Kaufman's original wrestling stunts. Carrey spat on him to get a real reaction. At one point, Lawler hit him hard enough to send him to the hospital. Jim then showed up wearing a neck brace and claiming he would not share scenes with Lawler, keeping everyone guessing whether he was hurt, performing, or both. The commentary for Man on the Moon later joked that Jim Carrey never came to work at all during that entire production. Only Andy Kaufman or Tony Clifton showed up each day. After that, playing a green fur-covered creature should have seemed simple. Instead, How the Grinch Stole Christmas became one of his worst physical experiences. To turn him into the Grinch, the makeup team had to cover about 92% of his body with prosthetics made from yak hair sewn into spandex. The The contact lenses, created to give him that eerie yellow eye look, felt huge and rough. They irritated his eyes so badly that some scenes later relied on digital tweaks to change his eye color, just so he would not have to wear them. On the first full makeup day, which took 8.5 hours, he snapped. He kicked a hole through his trailer wall and told them he could not do this. Producer Brian Grazer brought in a specialist who trained agents to endure torture for the intelligence world. This advisor gave Jim strange coping strategies. Eat everything you see. Punch yourself in the leg. Have someone slap you in the head. Smoke as much as you can. Jim took that advice literally. He chain-smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day for 92 days of production while muttering to himself that it was for the kids. Makeup artist Kazuhiro Tsuji almost quit, describing Jim as cruel at times because the discomfort made him lash out. After 2 weeks, they had barely captured 3 days' worth of usable footage because Jim would vanish or destroy things out of frustration. Then came a different kind of pain on Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Michel Gondry wanted the film to feel raw and real, so he refused to rely heavily on computer effects. He preferred practical tricks and natural light. He also did not always call action in the usual way, which left the actors off balance. One of the toughest days was the bathtub scene in the cramped apartment, where Joel and Clementine sit together in the tub and let water spill over the sides. Gondry kept them in that tub for more than 4 hours, chasing something he could not quite describe. Kate Winslet became exhausted and nauseous. She eventually fainted. Gondry wanted to keep going, but Jim finally snapped and shouted at him for pushing her beyond her limit. The director later admitted that he felt scared Jim might hit him in that moment. Throughout the shoot, Gondry encouraged Jim and Kate to improvise and pull from their real heartbreaks. They recorded long rehearsal tapes where they spoke about their past relationships and raw feelings, and many of those lines slid into the script. At the same time, there were quieter wounds. Gondry cast Ellen Pompeo as Joel's ex-girlfriend because she resembled Jim's real former fiancée, Renee Zellweger. Jim and Renee had just broken up before filming. Seeing that resemblance on set hurt him, and he later said that choice cut deeper than people realized. Even years later, in a new era of digital mascots and video game adaptations, Jim kept returning to roles that let him unleash that strange energy from the early days. When he agreed to play Dr. Robotnik in the Sonic the Hedgehog series, he once again became the loudest thing on screen. He reportedly earned around $12 million for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, playing both Eggman and Gerald Robotnik. The first Sonic film in 2020 had its own public drama when fans reacted badly to the original Sonic design, and Paramount chose to redesign the character entirely. Once the design was fixed, the movie raced to around $319 million worldwide. Inside the studio, everyone knew Jim's name helped sell that success. It was reported that he improvised roughly 40% of his lines and jokes, bending the character into his own kind of villain. The pay structure showed how Hollywood still worked. Jim, the familiar face, earned around $12 million. Ben Schwartz, who actually voiced Sonic, reportedly made about $500,000. Later, Keanu Reeves joined the third film as Shadow and received around $5 million. Idris Elba voiced Knuckles for about $3 million. Jim's name on the poster still carried the power of a small marketing campaign all by itself. As his career rolled forward, his public image collided with newer stars in unpredictable ways. One of the strangest clashes began at the Golden Globe Awards in 2014. On January 12th, he stepped on stage at the 71st Golden Globes to present the award for Best Motion Picture in the musical or comedy category. At that moment, Shia LaBeouf was drowning in scandal after being caught copying entire passages from Daniel Clowes's graphic novel, and even recycling other people's apologies as his own. Carrey quoted the old saying that dying is easy, and comedy is hard. Then added a little twist. I believe it was Shia LaBeouf who said that. So young, so wise. The room erupted in laughter. For the audience, it was just one quick joke in a night filled with them. For Shia, it became something else. Shia had just announced a few days earlier, on January 10th, that he was retiring from all public life. Within hours of the Golden Globes ending on January 13th, he broke that promise and went straight to Twitter. His first message about Jim was odd and almost poetic. If you explain Jim Carrey, you have killed him. Nobody knows if it is for real or not. That way he is immortal. It did not sound angry. Then the tone snapped. He posted a link to a music video by the Jane Carrey Band, which features Jim's daughter, and wrote that at least he did not get arrested for indecency on major Los Angeles highways or abandon love childs. The claims were false. Jim had never been arrested for that and had never abandoned his daughter. Within minutes, Shia tweeted, "I am not famous anymore," shouting in all caps, even while claiming to step away from fame. The whole meltdown played out in less than 2 hours. Soon after, he began deleting. He posted an apology that was just as strange as the rant. He wrote that Jim had said he was deeply involved in his daughter's life, and that he accepted this and regretted the earlier tweet. No one knows if Jim actually contacted him or if Shia invented that part. Fans began to notice something even more disturbing. Shia's account was following only one person. Not Jim, not another friend, only Jane Carrey. Combined with the shared video of her band, it started to look obsessive and creepy. Commenters called it stalker behavior and worried about her. The strange fight stopped almost as quickly as it began. Shia drifted deeper into odd performance art stunts, like wearing a paper bag over his head at a red carpet event, with the words, "I am not famous anymore" written on it. Jim never replied publicly. Insiders later said the attack hurt him, especially the comments about his daughter. At that time, he was already fighting heavy depression, something he had spoken about in interviews. He made a choice to stay silent, protect his child's privacy, and keep his own mental health intact, rather than chase headlines by firing back. Over time, the whole episode settled into legend as one of the weirdest one-sided feuds of the social media age. There was another side to that period of his life, far away from superhero sets and award show stages. Between 2005 and 2010, his long relationship with Jenny McCarthy carried both wild romance and quiet pain. They started dating in December 2005, but kept things private for months. By mid-2006, they went public, and for a while they looked like one of the happiest couples in Hollywood. On Valentine's Day in 2010, just weeks before their breakup, Jim rented a plane to skywrite J Heart J across the sky over Brentwood. He followed that with a joking tweet telling Jenny that she had stolen his heart, his soul, and anything she might find in his pants. It was grand and playful. Underneath, the relationship was cracking. Jim had already spoken about his depression on a news program in 2004, describing it as a constant low level of despair with peaks and valleys that felt sanded down by medication. He had used Prozac, then turned to vitamins and other methods. Jenny was a fierce activist, a high-energy public figure who saw herself as a warrior mother. That energy did not always fit with someone who often wanted to retreat into solitude and protect his fragile mental state. People in the media who followed them closely later suggested that his depression put strain on the relationship, creating gaps they could not bridge. In April 2010, they announced their split on Twitter. It looked mutual and calm on the surface. 2 years later, in June 2012, the story turned much darker. On The Howard Stern Show, Jenny said that her son Evan, who is on the autism spectrum and had grown close to Jim, still asked to see him almost every week. She said Jim refused all contact and had essentially disappeared from Evan's life. Her words painted a picture of a man who cut off a child who still loved him. Jim responded through a statement, He said he would always do what he believed was best for Evan's well-being, and that he loved Evan and would miss him. Sources close to him claimed Jenny had not actually reached out to arrange meetings. Jenny said on air that she still loved Jim, but as a mother, she wished he would stay in contact with the boy. The story became another public debate about his private choices. Marriage sat at the center of those debates too. Jenny said Jim did not want to marry again, and he admitted it in an interview around 2007. He explained that they would never get married and never get divorced, which he thought was ideal. His reluctance reached back to his first marriage to Melissa Womer, which lasted from 1987 to 1995. Their relationship fell apart as fame turned his life inside out. Melissa once warned him to come home, put his feet on the ground, or she could not stay married to him. In November 1994, he filed for divorce. The bitterness of that period made him cautious about traditional commitments later. After Jenny married Donnie Wahlberg in 2014, there were more ripples. Some reports claimed Donnie felt uneasy about her continued phone contact with Jim. Sources said he worried that Jim still had a hold over her, that his charm could pull her back. Those stories may have been exaggerated, but they underlined a simple truth. Jim's relationships, on and off screen, always came with intense emotions, power imbalances, and public attention that was hard to control. Through all of this, Jim Carrey kept working. He almost drowned to bring Truman to the edge of the world, lost himself inside Andy Kaufman until he did not know where the character ended, burned his eyes and skin inside yak fur and yellow lenses for The Grinch, defended Kate Winslet in a bathtub while his own heartbreak leaked into a script, and later twisted his body and voice again to turn a blue video game villain into something strangely human. He endured jealousy in restaurants, icy stares on sets, torture-level makeup chairs, Twitter storms in the middle of personal depression, and relationships that collapsed even after he wrote love letters into the sky.